Anthony and I are here in New York, but in D.C., all my good colleagues who cover the Hill and other politics joining me, congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns and Nicole Killian. And I want to talk to them both about what we've just projected, this highly watched, highly anticipated primary in Kentucky's 4th congressional district. Caitlin, you first.
Well, Major, I can say that the administration, the Trump administration, Trump allies are celebrating this. I want to read you a tweet or a post on X from Stephen Chung, the communications director at the White House. And I'm going to paraphrase here because he uses an expletive, but he says, "Do not ever doubt President Trump and his political power. F around and find out." This is another incumbent this week that we have seen that crossed the president and has now paid a political price for it. But Major, I want to talk a little bit about Thomas Massie as a congressman. Nicole and I cover Congress. Whenever friends or family ask me, who are some of the more interesting members of Congress? Who kind of stands out? And my answer is always goes back to Thomas Massie. He is someone, we are in such a political, in an era where everything is tribal. Politics is so tribal. You rarely have anybody standing out from their party leadership. Thomas Massie is one of them, and that separates him from some of these others, like Cassidy, who we saw in Louisiana fall last week. John Cornyn, who may indeed fall next week in his primary, now not endorsed by Trump. Massie has made it his identity, his brand, to stand apart from his party and from the president. Even though he votes with him a majority of the time, he has not been one of those members who has tried to get himself back into the president's good graces and try to move legislation that pleases the president or make statements that please the president. He has been unabashed about his record and has made it, a huge part of this campaign. He is not ashamed to be in this position. And Nicole and I both talked to him last week, as we often do, on the Hill, and he was confident he would win this race. But now the political reality is, obviously hasn't worked in his favor. But I think as you're looking at kind of the aggregate of the candidates who have, in Trump's view, crossed him in some way, Massie stands out as someone who has always kind of had this independent streak and didn't kind of realign himself to fit the president's priority.
And Nicole, it's worth pointing out that, as Ed said, the most expensive primary in American history. I believe the total is now close to $33 million spent, most of it against Thomas Massie, which indicates he wasn't a pushover. Defeated, yes, but it took a lot of Republican allied groups taking their direction from the White House, pouring a ton of money into this race in order to defeat Thomas Massie.
Yeah, that's right. And that certainly wasn't lost upon him. I guess to build off of Caitlin's point, I would say while he may have projected confidence potentially about winning the race, at the same time, I think he was very clear-eyed, because I asked him whether he was concerned about the outcome of this primary. And he did hedge a little bit, and he just said, look, this is going to be a close race. It's going to come down to turnout. There was another reporter with me who said, normally you're somebody who projects a lot of confidence, but you don't sound very ironclad about this. I'm just kind of paraphrasing the exchange, and he acknowledged, that he was noticing that the polling was looking a lot different this time around. He said, keep in mind, Tom Massie has been in office since 2012, and he said, normally when I'm looking at polls, they're 80-20, but it appeared the most recent polls, he was down to single digits. So he was watching those numbers, not just the amount being spent against him, but also these poll numbers very closely. And also, it wasn't lost upon him that he was part of this so-called Trump revenge tour, if you will. In fact, he called himself the main event or the main act. So to Caitlin's point, obviously, we have seen time and again, most recently, where the president has endorsed someone else in a primary race, just most recently with Bill Cassidy. Of course, now in this case, we saw the president come out against Massie's challenger. And of course, Massie suffering this loss tonight. So I think Massie was very clear-eyed about the odds that were stacked against him. But because he is one of those people who's not afraid to take a stand, all he could do is run and present his best case to the voters.